Good evening YouTube and welcome to this week's offering. So behind me is the project that we're going to be undertaking this week. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what we're hoping to achieve here before we get cracking. I've come inside to explain this piece to you because it's really windy outside. But basically we're going to be turning that horse trailer into a zero waste cafe, hopefully using 100% recycled, reused and reclaimed materials. The idea behind the horse trailer when it's finished is that the customer that has booked us to do this job is going to be able to tow this horse trailer out to various events and give talks, speeches and advice on a renewable way of living, explaining how we can all be a bit more green. In here she needs a seating area to be able to sit and chat, a counter space to make cups of tea and coffee for the people that she's showing, and everything else that she needs to be able to give her speeches and teach people how they can be a little bit more responsible of the environment around them and be a bit more renewable and basically a bit more green. So starting from the ground up, generally in any horse transportation vehicle, the first thing you're going to need to do is rip out that floor and also check the chassis. The reason for this is horse pee is like acid for wood and metal. Now in this trailer the floor is in incredibly good condition considering what it's been used for, and my only assumption for that is that it must have had a new floor, fairly new, prior to the customer purchasing this horse trailer. Now in the scheme of being renewable, we're going to try and save this floor because, as I say, it is in brilliant condition. All the supports underneath are galvanised and in fantastic condition, and the only part underneath is the chassis, which we're going to treat to give it longevity of life. Then we're going to overclad the floor with pallet wood to give it a nice rustic feel and added strength. So we're just in the process of repairing a couple of spots in the floor, and even down to the screws we're using reused materials on this project. I save everything. If a screw comes out and it looks alright, it's going in my random screw box, and today that's going to really pay off because we're now able to even use reused screws to build this project. Next thing we're going to need to do is put just a thin base layer of insulation down before we pallet clad the floor. So we're going to go upstairs to the graveyard and see what leftover materials I've got from other jobs to do that. So as you can see, we've got to raise the front part of the floor slightly. So to keep with the renewable side, we're using offcuts of wood and trimming them down to the width that we need to do that. And even lumps of wood like this that would normally go in the fire bin are coming in pretty handy. So now we've got the floor patched up and solid. The end is now raised up to meet the same height as this side. We've insulated, and then I've just put another thin layer of insulation over the top, and now we're ready to start cladding the floor. So to clad the floor, we've got this massive pile of pallet wood. Now where pallet wood is of course free, each pallet has had to be stripped and denailed, and now to make sure everyone is the same thickness because it's going on a floor and we don't want any trip hazards, we're going to have to run every board through this thicknesser, then we're going to have to plane the edges, then we're going to have to table saw the other edge to make sure that they all slot together as well. There's quite a lot of work involved in that. So I'll see you when we've got a load of boards. So here we are halfway through cladding our floor with our lovely planed, thickness, trimmed and chopped boards. It was raining while I was doing this and I got dripped on, meaning we need now to stop, and now we've got some good weather, we can repair the roof and then carry on with the floor. So the first thing we're going to need to do is clean the roof. It looks like it's never been cleaned, so that's not going to be super easy, but the reason for this is, one, you can't find a leak in a roof that's that mucky you can't see anything, and two, you can't stick anything to the roof to repair the roof when it's covered in all this dirt. So we'll get on with cleaning that, find the leak, repair it and get carried on. Now that the roof's clean, we can see that it's failed where the roof, the fiberglass roof, is riveted onto the metal frame inside, and every single one of these doesn't look great, and it's been bodged in the past with some non-flexible sealant that's just gone hard and not doing its job whatsoever. So we're going to have to drill these rivets out now You see that one's missing already. And then we're going to replace those with a tech screw, with a penny washer and some Sikaflex. So now we've got that leaky roof sorted out, we've been able to carry on with the floor. So now we've got the floor fully cladded in pallet wood. As I say, every single one of these has had to be trimmed, thickness, planed, so it's all nice and flat. And now all we're going to do is sand the whole thing, but not so much that we take away this rustic feel. We don't want it to look like new wood, or it would have been pointless. So we're just going to sand it just so there's no splinters, but try and keep that rustic feel of all the different coloured boards. Now, if you remember in our first video back, we said we were going to be clearing this garage out to make a micro camper workspace, and we made some brilliant progress with that. And in doing so, we found a load of great lengths of wood. So what we're doing now is trimming these down into inch by 2 pieces to build the cabinets and everything for this trailer. Again, just trying to keep up with that reused and recycled ethos that we're working with on this particular build. So we really need to get on with constructing this front counter kitchen that's going to be in front of the drop down. Now to do that, we're going to have to remove these padded sides because it encroaches right where the kitchen is, but we're going to reuse them. We're going to wrap them in Hessian and hopefully replace them on the sides to give a nice backrest when you're sitting up front. So we're making some moves in the horse box now. We are waiting, we are waiting on the fridge being delivered, as it's coming from an ex-catering company that's been donated, as is some of the other catering equipment. So what we've done is laid the base out for the kitchen so we know how long the bench seats can be, and now with the bench seats framed out again with that timber that we ripped down to 2x1s, we're going to start cladding this with pallet wood right around those two sides, and then we can continue building this one. Now originally they just wanted 2 matching bench seats, but this is only 4'6" long, and it can't be any longer because of that ramp. So that means when this gets turned into a bed, it would have been 4'6" long for 2 adults. Not ideal at all. So what I've done is extended this bench seat right to this end, which is going to make an extra bit of seating, but also the panel that drops in the middle is going to be diagonal. So that means that the person that's sleeping on this side will be able to send their feet over there and both have a comfy night's sleep. So we've now got all the framework finished and we're fully cladded all the way across the front of the bench seats, and the fridge has finally been delivered, so we can start looking at building that kitchen around the fridge to make sure it all fits in. That's next job on the agenda. So we're just making all the locker tops now for all the bench seats. So these are going to be sort of just locker lids that are going to go on there. I decided to actually make glue ups for all of these instead of bracing them on the bottom. 1, to save a little bit of weight, and 2, because I just quite like doing glue ups. I don't know why, I find it kind of satisfying. So we're just going to glue a series of boards together. To do this, you have to plane the boards to the same thickness. You then have to plane the edges of the boards to make sure that they sit together nicely, and then chop them all to the same size and then glue them all together like so, clamping them in all sorts of different directions to make sure they're all flat and squeezed together. We're going to do a second one there, and then I've run out of clamps, but I need to make about 5 or 6 of these, so I think that's my cue to buy more clamps. So this is the finished product of the tops of the benches, which is going to be our lids. So we've gone from a glue up like that to a rough top, just a solid board with no supports, to then this cool, smooth but rustic looking top that we're going to put on. Now, when my mum passed away, we cleared out her garage and it was full of all sorts of building materials and bits that you can use around the house mainly, but we've ended up with drawers like this just full of hinges and stuff, so all of this can be reused into this build without having to need to buy any other bits and bobs like that. We've got piano hinges, we've got different recessed hinges, collapsible hinges. So another thing that we can reuse into this build to make sure that we're not purchasing any obsolete materials that we don't really need, to keep this build as close to 100% reused as we possibly can. The front of house is nearly complete. We've got the fridge in, and then we've got some shelves all made out of reclaimed wood. The piece of worktop, the only piece of worktop we've got that's nearly wide enough is just that, only nearly wide enough. So we've actually got a gap at both ends. Now we've got two options. We can either go out and buy another piece of worktop, and then that would kind of defeat the object of using reclaimed materials. So what we're going to do is cut it back even further at either end and put a small shelf unit at either side to make up the shortfall out of more reclaimed wood and stick to that 100% reclaimed goal. Now that is the first of the two shelves constructed, using a couple of scaff boards off my friend and some copper pipes from a plumber mate of mine that he's just ripped out of a house. We give them a bit of a sand up with some really low grit sandpaper, and then we slid the copper pipes into a hole in one side that goes fully through the other side, and then we're using an old broom handle as dowel. So that's the first of two shelves built in. We do need another scaff batten, which I'm waiting to go and grab to make the second one, which is going to go on the opposite side just here. Now the customer originally wanted some dainty little shelves with bent copper pipes around the front. However, we went for this design because up here is like a plastic tarp sheet that just dangles down here, and when they're sleeping in there at night, I explained that when that wind starts blowing, it's just going to blow straight in if there's nothing holding that tarp fast. So with these nice solid shelves at either side, we'll be able to mount doors on the back of this, which are going to open up, but when they're closed, they're going to stop that tarp flapping and help keep them warm a bit in the middle of the night. Another thing to help keep them warm is we've now got sheep's wool insulation lined right round the roof. This was supplied by the customer, and she must have measured up pretty well because that's all we've got left after finishing the roof off. So now we're going to drape the roof like a marquee with Hessian. Hopefully. I am not a marquee draper. It's a new one for me, but it's going to be a nice, cost-effective, and also keeping in theme with the recycled materials way to get that roof lined and not just be a mass of sheep's wool in the top. We'll see how that works out. The roof is now up, and that went way better than I ever expected it to, and I'm really pleased with how that's wrapped around on the battens that we stuck to the original framing of the roof. That's really just finished it off and give a nice tidy clean look to it. Both the shelves in place, not fastened in yet. And so what we're going to do now is with another scaff batten, we're going to bridge the gap between the two to make a frame to hang some doors in. We're going to spruce these walls up with some metal paint. I need to go look in the stores to see what we've got. Hopefully something that's going to tie in with the build. And I feel like we're actually nearing completion. Losing daylight fast now, but we've got one coat of paint on. We managed to find some wild thyme, which doesn't really reflect what I'm having doing this job. However, got something exciting now. Alright, it's not that exciting, but it is for me because this shelf here is full of offcuts of really thin bits of ply. Every single time we do a van, the roof and the walls, you always end up with big chunks that you don't need, and nobody really wants it because it's like 3mm and 5mm. And when we moved, I had to just chuck loads because I had a massive stack of it. But I'm actually going to get to use some of that, and we're going to wrap it in Hessian and cover the bottoms of the walls in it, just so we can use up some more of that Hessian, use up some otherwise all but useless bits of ply, and stick to that reused, recycled ethos that we're trying to. It is getting towards the end of the day now, and so in the next cutscene I might have even had a shave because I'm starting to look like a Greenpeace warrior that lives in the wilderness. As promised, fresh cutscene, fresh shave. So the paint is now dry. That looks so much better, and we've added a nice piece of wooden trim just to break that up and cover the nasty plastic trim that was on there, which gives you a much nicer finish. Both of these are now bolted down to the worktop, which is bolted down all the way to the floor now. And then we've added this slat across the top, which is going to be to close the doors against, which are going to go in this gap between the two shelves there. Really coming along now. We are nearing the completion. All we need to do is we can finish this section off here because we've been waiting for a sink and the water containers. It's just a simple plumbing setup, but until we got it we couldn't finish this section here that needs finishing. But we are getting close to the end now, and it's really starting to take shape. So now we need to construct some doors to go in here, so when at night time, when that's all closed up, it's going to stop all that draft just blowing through this sheet that hangs down to keep them a little bit warmer. So to do that, yeah, you guessed it, all these boards need to be planed and sanded and chopped and fettled and sorted out to turn them into something that looks like a door. I'll see you when I've done that. So like a lot of time in this job, we're still waiting to source some parts, bits that we need. It's quite hard to source parts when you can't just go out and buy most of it off the shelf because using reclaimed materials. So this piece of rotten plywood, it's just a little piece of sort of like finishing wood from the secondary trapdoor where you would normally let the horses out. So I've glued up some pieces of wood and drawn around it best we can, because obviously a lot of it's missing, and then we're just going to make a nice new piece to fit into that hole just to finish it off, make it look a bit better while we're waiting for parts to arrive, just to fill in my time really. And we are really in the final stages now. Super pleased with how this is turning out. We've finally got the bluetti box boxed in now. We've cladded all this centre out but left it easy accessible for the water tanks to come in and out. This is all plumbed up, got the sink in. We just need to make a chopping board to cover this sink, so to give an extra bit of workspace. And just check out this tap made from plumbing fittings and a micro switch. The sink's obviously full of water because we've bonded it down, so that's holding the sink down. We've got some nice uplighters built in there, but mind the mess and the tools, but we are finally reaching completion. All we've got left to do is get these doors, what are going to go on this front to stop all that wind coming in, fixed up, attached and hung. And then we can varnish the whole thing right through and I can put this to bed. So to make this chopping board, I've got some nice lumps of oak. These are actually offcuts from when we cut the worktop up to build Apollo, so nice that they're coming in handy. We need it to be 300 circular, and this piece is coming in at just under 350, be 340, so that's absolutely perfect. So we're going to cut a circle into that, route it up, make it look nice, and then we're even going to throw it into the laser engraver and put the customer's logo onto the top there as well. Down to the final hurdle. All we've got to do is get these doors on. Now these doors are constructed like this. This is multiple pallet boards, and instead of putting a frame on, which just adds more weight, the same as the locker doors that we put inside, we've glued all these pallets together to make one solid board. And then, bit of an heart attack moment for you, once it's all done and sanded up, it's going to look something like that. So now we're going to get this one hung. Shortly that one will be ready to take the clamps off and get it sanded. We can get that one hung. Then we can put a couple of coats of yacht varnish over the entire trailer and it'll be ready for the big reveal. So now we're all prepped, ready for varnish, doors hung and everything, but I wanted to share this with you because I was just terrified of actually painting with this varnish. We've never used this brand before. We always use yacht varnish, but we use rustings, and this is coatings and finishes. And when I opened it, it just looks like black paint. I'm gonna show you how it goes on, because yacht varnish is the future. Yacht varnish is the absolute future. Look at this. I'm gonna start on this piece. So this is a scaff board. I don't know how well this comes across on a video, but really makes it pop. Brings out all the grain yacht varnish. Just want to show you one more bit of this yacht varnish before we do the reveal, before we actually do the floor. You can see this is the original floor, all beige, all boring, and then yacht varnish. And we are finally finished. So before I take you and show you around the entire thing, because this is the end of the video, of course, I'm going to encourage you to give us a like, drop us a comment in the comment section if there's anything that we've missed or you'd like to ask us any questions about this particular build. And of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Now, let's have a quick walk around. We'll show you from the outside first. So this peculiar looking structure is actually a bed frame, but we've doubled it up. They wanted everything to be multiple use. So we put legs on the back, so when they go to shows during the day, so it's not in the way, they can have this propped up and use it as a notice board for any notices that they want to pin up. As I say, what they're going to be doing is giving talks on sustainable living, so anything that they're advertising or showing during the day, they can pin onto this and make use of it while it's not in the sleeping position. This is the solar panel that comes with the Bluetti box. We have made an extension cable for that because the cable that comes with it is all but useless and doesn't go very far at all, so we've made them an extension cable that will get them anywhere around the perimeter of the horse box, depending on where the sun might be at that moment in time. This bottom corner we have our electrical cupboard, so this is our hookup to charge the Bluetti box, and also the original solar cables and our extension cable that we've built for them. Then lots of shelves to put their wares on that they're going to be selling in this off-grid coffee bar, and also the fridge which is running off the Bluetti box. These doors close up at night and then the top drape comes down to keep it warmer in there, because as I say, this is going to be a sleeping compartment as well. The shelves that were made from old scaff boards that I picked up from a friend, and again this copper piping that again came from a friend who just happens to be a plumber, so we can get all our scrap pieces of copper for making these lovely rustic projects. Under our custom slow circular earth chopping board, which is the business name for the customer, we do have our sink and running water from our extremely cool tap. Jasper coming to say hello, you should not be in here. And of course our eco-friendly business cards, so Kerry's knocked some of these up for her, so instead of handing out business cards to everybody, you can just scan the QR code and that will take you to their website and also to their Instagram page. Of course Kerry's put a little House of Laser business card in there. And then coming into the talk area and also sleeping area, so like I said, they will be doing talks at festivals on sustainable living, so we needed to create a space that would amply sit a few people so they can sit and do the talks on sustainable living. So we went with this double bench seating which also has every single piece of this as lift up storage, so loads of storage. All of this is storage, so they've got plenty of storage in there. The roof is just a super simple design. We've insulated with the sheep's wool and then just wrapped in hessian, and it's give this really cool rustic dome effect, which I'm really pleased with how that turned out. We have the Bluetti box in the corner there that's powering the whole thing, and behind again just an offcut of hessian. We've got our plumbing system and our 12-volt electrics up there. We went with uplighters because obviously of the ceiling there's not anything really to fix up here, so we've gone with a set of uplighters which at night time give a really cool effect. You can almost see it now as it's getting a bit dusky, lighting up the two shelves there. I'm super pleased with how this floor's turned out. It's really got a cool effect. Really pleased with how that yacht varnish has really made all this pop. And then the grand finale is when we get the bed out. So obviously the customer is going to be making cushions to fill this, but originally we was only asked to do bench seats to this length here, which would have made a 4'6" long bed, which was way too short for anybody to sleep on. So by putting this in and then having the triangular shape across to that length, that means that you'll be able to get two adults comfortably, even a child thrown in there I'm sure. And also, even with the door up, we've still got a little bit of standing space here should you need to stand up and stretch your legs in the night. And plenty of space under the bed, you know, if there's anything that you've got outside, any festival wares that you need to stuff under there, so they're not in your way while you're trying to sleep. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I'm not going to waffle too much because this video, I'm sure, is going to be a long one, but we have done really well to stick to that 100% recycled and reclaimed. We have had to get a few little bits in. We needed varnish, we didn't have enough in our stores and junk cupboards, a couple of little latches, a few bits that we haven't been able to get either second hand or from Facebook or by upcycling things, but We've stayed really close to that 100% target. I couldn't give an exact percentage, but it's super close, and I'm really pleased with how this turned out. If you've enjoyed this video, remember, please give us a thumbs up, like, comment, share, all that jazz. I'm not going to waffle on anymore. Remember, if in doubt, get the Sikaflex out, and we will see you next Tuesday.